The book club are back to brainwash us with the next chapter, and we're scaling the 8 mountains to execute Plan 75. I'm Van Connor.
And I'm Adam Ball, and this is Off Screen, your 7-day guide to everything movies.
Boom.
Hello and welcome back. So we've got 4 brand new movies to talk about this week that Van Connor has already seen. I know nothing. I've seen nothing. So basically this is me interviewing Van to find out what he thought of the movies.
Is that what we are now? We're an interview show now. Is that what this is?
It's kind of how it works, really. Me asking you lots of ridiculous questions about the movies that you have seen. So with the first one then, we are heading to the Italian Alps with 8 mountains.
Yes, Le Otto Montagne, as it is in its mother tongue, according to IMDb, because obviously I don't speak Italian. I'm not that cultured. This is a subtitled film straight off the bat, Mr. Ball. So I'm sorry, start clenching. It's subtitled. You know me. I'm subs, not dubs. You're the other way, sir. You can tell we just had a conversation about the raid 5 minutes ago.
Yep.
New movie, and this is the new movie, directed by Felix van Groningen, whose name I did not know offhand, and Charlotte van der Misch. Now, Felix van Groningen, it was the director, it turns out, the writer-director of Beautiful Boy back in 2018, the Oscar bait Steve Carell, Timothée Chalamet drug addiction drama that fell so flat. Honestly, you could have wrung the thing out. It was so soggy and damp. It was quite a time. This, way better movie. Straight off the bat, I'm not going to bury the lead. This is a way better movie than Beautiful Boy. Okay, so the pedigree of Oscar bait is gone. He's now made an actual movie as co-director, it seems, as well. Now, it's based on Paolo Cognetti's novel. It's been adapted for the screen by Van Groningen and Van der Misch as well. And it centres around 2 young boys. So we've got Pietro and Bruno. They start out as young boys, I think about like 10 or 12 years old. They meet in a remote community in the Italian mountains. I think it's Bruno has come from the city, is visiting family. They are the only 2 kids of comparable age in the small village. They bond for a time and then they're separated, for many years. They reunite years and years later as adults when I think it's then, I might be getting the 2 boys' names the wrong way round, so forgive me if that's the case. If you've seen this and you're yelling at your iPhone at me, I apologise in advance, but bear with me. So when they reunite because Pietro's father has passed. Now, Pietro's father was something of a hard ass and didn't quite get him, but he did have something of a bond briefly in the past with Bruno. The 2 reunite with the idea of going back to the remote town in the mountains and building a sort of a getaway cabin / locale for themselves. And whilst they are doing this, the story starts to come to light that when Bruno went back to the city, that wasn't the end of his relationship with both the town and Pietro's father. And the story of the burgeoning surrogate father-son relationship that developed between the 2 starts to cause not so much a rift between them, but bring bitterness and jealousy and serious questions of already, sort of laboured self-worth back to the forefront of Pietro's world. He sets out on a journey to go and scale 8 mountains in Nepal, for instance, as he tries to process and deal with this, and also his friendship with Bruno and the connection that they are forming yet again in their adult years. I think you could probably get away reductively with calling this Straight Back Mountain, because it's basically Brokeback Mountain without the sex. It's got the same emotional love, you know what I mean? Like, these 2 guys are broing out. There is a deep emotional intimacy between these 2 men, but it's not of a romantic or sexual nature, for instance, in the same way as like Brokeback Mountain. So Straight Back Mountain, pretty good term. So Luca Marinelli and Alessandro Boyi are the adult Pietro and Bruno, respectively, I believe. And wow, great performances, just absolutely wonderful performances. But this is one that a combination of really great writing, really get character writing. Actually, this really gets under the skin. There's no psychological stone left unturned. It delves into every facet of the lives of these 2 men that has been affected by this story, and that's everything. It's one of those things. Your relationship with your father, for instance, determines so much of your life and who you are, as I'm sure you can say yourself. And how this seeps into every facet of their words, and they play it beautifully. But as I say, it's a combination of great writing for that, great performances that get that, and really lavish scenery, cinematography, the aesthetic of it. It has, like, I think, to be honest, we watched a film recently. What was the movie we reviewed about? We reviewed a movie about a preacher a Danish priest going to Iceland, I think it was, quite recently to build a church. And we talked about how they wonderfully use the environment and use the location to sell the desolation of this. This is kind of the other way. This is not really about the desolation. This is kind of about the solitude. It is about this sort of picturesque landscape in which they are the two pinprick figures in the center of this vast, wide open terrain, and it's genuinely beautiful stuff. Like a moving film, really moving, really gorgeous film with wonderful performances. I'm going to keep referring back to the pad. I'm sorry, I'm terrible with Italian names. Marinelli in particular, I think, because it's easy, I think, to read this as his story. I think he is great in this. Marinelli in particular, I think, is great. But Alessandro Borghi as Bruno, I do think gets the harder role. Because obviously, he's kind of the fortunate one out of the two. And that's, I think, a bit more difficult. It's easier to play victimized, I think, than it is to play kind of not successful, but more fortunate, more blessed, as it were. And I think he has a more difficult time. And yet the performances are both uniformly brilliant. Absolutely brilliant performance. I don't even speak Italian. I was sucked into the drama of this. But it is, I think there's serious directorial heft in there. And especially after having sat through Beautiful Boy a few years ago, which was a terrible movie. Was really. I still got the Oscar screener on the shelf in my. The only DVDs I keep in the house now are the Oscar screeners, and it's. I'll never revisit it. I'm never going to open. I'm reticent to even keep the thing. I hated the movie so much. Timothy Chalamet awful in it, but I think this is very much an apology for that in a sense. All about that screenplay, all about those performances. There is just great cinematography by Ruben Impens, I think it is. I think it's Ruben Impens as the cinematography on this. I'm trying to look up who the composer was. Daniel Norgren. Daniel Norgren is on the score for this. And that, I thought, worked quite well as well. I think the film is going to struggle with mainstream audiences naturally enough. It's a subtitled, character-based drama. This is not going to go gangbusters at a Cineworld on a Friday night at 10 p.m. You know what I mean? But on the other hand, show this in a Curzon, 1 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon, and you're going to see those crowds turn up for this. And I don't think they're going to leave disappointed. I think this is one I could see this turning up in contention for best international feature for Italy next year. I would hazard a guess that this has probably already been submitted, and that information is probably buried in the production notes that I didn't read for this. So, but I would bet folding money this is at the very least been submitted for Italy's best international feature nomination for next year. In which case, absolutely understandable. I think it's a cracking film. It's called The Eight Mountains, or Le Otto Montagne. It is in cinemas from today. It's going to be in your art house cinemas. I don't think necessarily you're going to find this in branches of Odeon. I almost said or UCI for a second. The UCI doesn't exist anymore, does it? No, it doesn't, does it? There's no UCIs anymore. No, not really UCI.
Not that I know of.
No, not really UCI since the 90s. Last time I saw a UCI, I think Waterworld was in cinemas. But, and I say that, I literally saw Waterworld in a UCI. Crystal Peak, Sheffield, yo. Alive. So, The Eight Mountains, unlimited from today. I give it my 2 thumbs up. I think it's an excellent movie. I don't think it's going to be everyone's cup of tea, but to be fair, I think for those who it is, you're going to walk away very, very happy with this. It's a cracking effort.
There you go. Make your own mind up if you want to go and see it. It is in cinemas, as Van said, from today. All right, we're back in a moment. I'm really looking forward to Van reviewing this because, to me, on paper, this is my kind of movie. We're going to talk about Plan 75 in just a second. Stay right where you are. Hello and welcome back. So let's talk about another new movie that is out in cinemas from today. Brainwashed, Sex, Camera, Power. I mean, as a title, I'm in.
I know, right? I think just colloquially referred to as brainwashed, subtitle, sex dash camera dash power. I had the chance to watch this at the LFF last year, and then I missed out. Because I think, as happens with me in the LFF, week of release screenings tend to clash with the movies you really want to see, and I was really up for this. So, the premise here, this is a documentary. It is based on effectively a TED Talk type setup, which we actually do get cutaway footage of, from, is it Nina Menke, I think? We'll check this one out. I think it's Nina Menke. And he's about... Nina Menkes is about the relationship between cinema and female exploitation. It's about the male gaze and how cinema has been constructed since its infancy to literally promote the male gaze above all costs, and what effect this has had over the 100+ years of cinema now. And we actually see this demonstrated through the use of, and this is how it's stated, A-list films. So we're talking about like modern, contemporary, big movies and how they prioritize the male gaze above all else, how that impacts both cinema as a medium and society, as well as just audiences, and what should be done to correct this. And more importantly, above all else, how this is presented to us through, of all things, literally the medium of shot composition in cinemas, how a single frame, how things are staged and filmed, and how this has been constructed and designed since time immemorial in cinema, entirely to serve and prioritize the male gaze. I will listen to this clip.
The male gaze is definitely normalized in our society.
Almost all of us are familiar with the phrase, the objectification of women. What exactly is an object and what is a subject?
It's the stuff that I think you thought, and maybe I thought, well, everybody knows this. It's in the ether. And so to name it and to show it is something that I believe can change the world.
I personally see a very clear connection between this visual language of cinema, employment discrimination against women.
It's a visual medium, Kayla.
And an environment of pervasive sexual harassment, abuse, and assault.
I find this kind of thing fascinating, actually, and really important because, I mean, going on what you kind of said a moment ago, really, it would make sense that cinema has almost changed how people think and almost, I guess, caused it in some senses, because cinema sometimes reflects real life and real life sometimes reflects cinema, doesn't it, when it's gone on long enough.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you know me, I have this fundamental philosophy that I do think movies are the primary narrative storytelling device of the human race. Like 20th and 21st century human beings, I do believe, hold cinema as the primary mode of narrative storytelling. So obviously that has an effect on our development, on our sociology, how we interact with one another. And on a macro level, you kind of see this with how we have become a meme culture, how we quote films, how we refer to soundtrack beats all the time. I mean, this week, and just go on TikTok this week, and 90% of it is Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and it's the same couple of clips, but always with everyone chiming in their own commentary and things on animal cruelty and empathy and stuff like that. Has been a wonderful thing to sort of witness that, by the way. But conversely to that, you look at the next level beyond that, a bit more deeply rooted, and how a lot of our fundamental programming that's instilled in us from infancy, when we're introduced as children to films, like even animated films, like for children, and the fundamental sexism that is inherently baked in. Now, Menkes's film does go to the extent of actually demonstrating that, look, you can have all the filmmakers in the world for 100 years. The fact of the matter is just always going to be that only a pathetically small amount are women, and that's before you even get to the diversity question. Like a very, very tiny fraction. And even things like the use of music to promote certain let's just say mindset has been put forward by largely male composers. And the film makes some incredibly fascinating points. The one that hit me the most, I think, is literally the way in which we are presented with nudity. Now, putting aside the obvious one that we all know, we've all said in pubs since, again, time immemorial, that it's interesting that we will show all the female nudity in the world, but you'll never see a guy drop trowel. It's that kind of a thing. Just look at a 50 Shades of Grey movie and notice the disparity. It's the Game of Thrones problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Every actress in Game of Thrones has to get a kit off, but every dude stays conveniently covered for the most part. Game of Thrones is probably the wrong example to use there, actually, now I think about it. There's a fair amount of schlong in GOT, if we're being honest.
I was about to say there are some schlongs, yeah.
But the way that nudity is framed and shown, and we're given practical examples of this from contemporary movies, from modern films, from movies that star people like Ryan Gosling. And people we're talking about modern, A-list, top-tier films, Academy Award-winning films that one can. You get shown blue is the warmest colour, and there's talk, there's discussion about how things have had to change, how we've had to introduce intimacy coordinates, things like that. But I can't get past this idea that when female nudity is presented on screen, and we have demonstrated this, cameras linger. They don't show faces. They show close-ups that have no real function. There's no real art to them. It's just the male gaze. And then conversely, and we're shown this actually through a clip from Crazy Rich Asians, in which we're shown, yes, but then when you get male nudity, notice how Henry Golding is there with his kit off, but he's fully in frame. His entire body is in the frame. His face is there. You can see his face, you can see his knees. You get the whole body. If, his female counterpart, however, you're just getting the ass. It's just an ass shot. And then the camera may slowly pan. And that kind of disparity, I think, is more disheartening to have simply laid out in front of you than a billion straight-up verbal conversations. Me telling you this now is going to have so much less effect than you literally being presented with that visual example. Which is, I put this on myself, because obviously male privilege. We both have that. We're obviously the worst two people in the world to talk about, the female mistreatment at the hands of the male gaze, because we have that privilege. But this is a film that will absolutely enrage you by actually forcing you right in front of it and saying, look, here it is, have a gander. This is what you're in for. And some of the examples used are fast. Bombshell. Do you remember Bombshell from we reviewed that together on the BBC, I think.
Yeah.
Bombshell was the Time's Up Fox News story with Megyn Kelly, and that you could actually hear John Lithgow from that movie in the clip. And the reading of that, for instance, is quite intriguing. There are films that you would think would be considered quite progressive that actually aren't when they're, held up to the cold light of day. And yes, before anyone asks, of course, Adrian Lynn's disastrous remake of Lolita from 1997 has to appear in this movie. Of course it does. Because you couldn't have a movie about problematic elements of society without having Jeremy Irons turn up for it. Because he's Jeremy Irons. What are you going to do?
It's fascinating just sitting here listening to you talk about it. Really has fascinated me, and like you say, it's having it shoved in your face really hits home actually what you've known all along, but actually it just points it out to you. I think even from having this conversation now, every movie I watch, I'm going to be thinking, oh, actually, that's that point the fan was talking about. Yeah, you're right.
I would wholeheartedly recommend this. I'd recommend this to everyone full stop, because I think it's a wonderful documentary anyway, but I think it has serious sociological importance. And I do think, I think aspiring filmmakers should watch this as just part of the course. This should be one of those things you do first week on a film course. You buy a copy of Robert McKee's story that you half read and then never pick up again, and you watch this film. Those should be the two things you do first week of any film course from now on. Half read Robert McKee's story, pretend that he's Brian Cox, and then watch this movie, Brainwashed, Sex, Camera, Power. The list of people that show up for this is fascinating as well in and of itself. So Catherine Hardwicke, director of the first Twilight movie, 13, which doesn't get brought up in here, but would have been quite an interesting one to have seen discussed. I was shocked, actually, that they didn't get Emerald Fennell in there, who directed Promising Young Woman. But they do, however, get Eliza Hittman, who did Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, and this is my absolute favourite one, Maria Geiss. Maria Geiss shows up here. Maria Geiss has made a fair few films over the years, but for the purposes of this film, is literally credited, and I love this to death because I can't figure out how they settled on this, is credited as the director of the forgotten 1996 Sean Bean Sheffield United underdog story, When Saturday Comes. That is an actual thing in a documentary in 2023. Right, there are only two people alive who remember the forgotten 1996 Sean Bean Sheffield United underdog drama When Saturday Comes. Myself and my best friend
one of
Andy
them.
Sharp. Yeah, myself and my best mate are the only two people alive, and that's only because we were desperate to go and see it when we were 13. I say, brainwashed, sex camera power. Clearly I did miss out when he was at the LFF. I say I wanted to see it, didn't get the opportunity. Do see this. It's in cinemas from today. It's being distributed by the BFI, so it will be available to, I think, purchase and watch on the BFI player shortly, but I don't have a definitive date on that. I've tried to find a definitive date. There doesn't seem to be one, but they're usually quite quick with it. But if you are in the market for a solid documentary that's going to stir some feelings in you, definitely check this out. This is unmissable stuff.
Amazing. All right. Well, you can make your own mind up. We are moving on. We are back to Italy with Jane Fonda in a moment. We're going to talk about book club, next chapter. Stay right where you are.
And now it's time for a segment we like to call Off-Screen Pays the Bills. Hey, Adam.
Hey, Van. What's going on?
Ain't nothing going on but the rent. You know how it is. And so we're delighted to thank our sponsors for this week at Shelter, the architecture channel. If, like me, you're sick of the age-old reality TV type of architecture content out there, Shelter's absolutely where you need to be. It's the only channel in the world offering up high-quality, authentic programming on architecture, urban planning, and the built environment, with award-winning films, exclusive originals, and a curated library that features full-blown star architects like Zaha Hadid and Harry Sadler. So get inspired, go check out Shelter at shelter.stream or via their apps on all major platforms. And whilst you're doing that, feel even better because you're doing something for the environment too, with Shelter planting a tree for every subscriber every month. So huge thanks again to our sponsors at Shelter, the architecture channel. This episode is also sponsored by the good folks at NordVPN. Get yourself some industry-leading online security today with more than 5,000 servers in 60 countries. Want to protect your privacy online? NordVPN. Going on holiday and don't want to miss EastEnders on iPlayer? Boom! NordVPN. I've been using NordVPN for a while now. My MacBook, my iPad, phone. Hell, I've even set it up on my home router so I can watch Stargate on Netflix from the US. Oh yes, you can access other countries' versions of your favorite streaming platforms. And it's not even difficult to use. Literally just a single click. And if that's too much effort, there's an auto-connect function too. Fully encrypted, no bandwidth throttling. Go check out NordVPN right now. Or, finish this episode first, but head on over to nordvpn.com/offscreen and try them out for yourselves, risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. That's nordvpn.com/offscreen. And now, back to the show.
Hello and welcome back to Off Screen. We have two movies left to talk about. We're going to talk about Plan 75 in a moment. Cannot wait to see this movie. But we're going to start now. Back to Italy. Jane Fonda, book club, next chapter. So talk to me, Van. What was this all about?
I'm just going to confess, by the way, that when we stopped recording that block, and you queued us up for the book club sequel, I literally thought that you said book club with Jane Fonda. My response as soon as we stopped recording that block was to say, whose breasts do in fact appear in this documentary. True story, because obviously Barbarella has to at least be mentioned in the conversation of problematic depictions of women in cinema. And of course, Jane Fonda is one quarter of the book club. Did you see the first book club movie, Mr. Ball?
I think I saw half of it. This is my problem. Right. I put movies on too late and fall asleep.
I do that all the time. This is why I only watch TV in bed. I only watch TV shows in bed. I never watch movies now because I can fall asleep during a TV show.
Good idea.
Get back to it. Yeah, it's why and it's usually only a show I've seen before. It's like at the moment I have Ted Lasso on when I'm going to bed every night. So, Book Club 2018 was effectively an elder lady sex comedy, in which a group of four friends, played by Jane Fonda, Mary Steenburgen, Diane Keaton, and Candice Bergen, God, the Oscar nominations /wins between that quartet get together for a book club, and in the first one they read 50 Shades of Grey, and reading it inspired them to sort of reignite their own sexual passions, their long dormant sexual passions. I say long dormant, except for Jane Fonda, because she's just playing Jane Fonda, which means she has the greatest libido of any human being alive. We've now got the sequel. We've now got a sequel which takes place 5 years later and literally opens with, here's what, previously on the book club, to fill in the missing years. So obviously the four ladies have gone through the pandemic. They have been separated for that amount of time. They have kept the book club going via Zoom. Well, I think it's actually Skype within the context of what we're actually shown, but they tell us it's Zoom. And at the stage where they are now reunited, when normality is restored, I don't want to say the pandemic is over, but at the point the pandemic, quote unquote, is over, they are reunited. They're reading their latest book, The Alchemist, and it's at this point that Jane Fonda's character reveals she has gotten engaged to that handsome Don Johnson fellow from the first movie who managed to woo the unwooable Miss Fonda. And for their bachelorette party, they are going to revive not so much revive a long dormant idea, so much as fulfill a long-neglected promise that they made to themselves in their youth, that they would go on a girls' holiday to Italy, to Tuscany. So they decide this is going to be Fonda's bachelorette party. They are off to Italy. And so faster than you can say Sex and the City 2, we're boarding Lufthansa. Have a listen.
This needed to happen. It did. It did. This is the universe hitting the eject button on me and Arthur once and for all. Best friends, tough love. Stop giving the universe and fate credit for everything. You're making a choice. What? We're on this trip, not because of fate, but because we're best friends for 50 years. We show up for each other. Fate didn't bring us on this trip. Our love for each other did.
Love and the wonderful people at Lufthansa.
It was a nice flight.
Bit of product placement there.
Yes, I was just going to say that. I mean, that sounds very heartfelt and meaningful. Is there any comedy in this? Because Jane Fonda does comedy so well.
Genuinely thought you were going to say nudity then. Right, no, comedy. Of course there's comedy. There's bags of comedy. there's bags of nudity, actually, to be honest. But that's sort of PG-13, kind of nicely disguised nudity. Right, first of all, I really love the first one. And I enjoyed the second, but it's in no way, it doesn't hold a candle to that first one. First of all, it neglects one very key element of the first movie. The first movie was contingent on the book element. They had the inciting incident of the 50 Shades of Grey thing. The actual book element of the second installment of the book club, The Alchemist, is so offhand that I think when we were coming out of this, I was talking to a friend of mine, Joyce Glasser, who's a critic for the Mature Times. I think it's Mature Times. So she tends to review films for older audiences. And I asked her about the book club. Did you see the book club? She said, I didn't like it. I'm like, why should we? Well, they didn't even do the book thing this time around. They did. They were doing The Alchemist. And it's done so offhandedly that you can very easily watch this entire movie whilst paying attention and just not notice the book element because it's kind of not really a thing. It also just doesn't seem as well thought out as the first movie was. The first movie had, I think, a lot more heart. This feels a lot more phoned in. This definitely feels like we had a pandemic, the first movie was successful, we need to make something, let's write something while we're all kind of, locked away in our homes. It has that feel of a sort of incarceration project, like we all had during lockdown. We all had our incarceration projects. You feel like this was someone's. Doesn't have, it's worth noting as well, they actually undo not so much undo, but redo one of the characters' storylines from the previous movie, which is one of those annoying things they do with sequels. I always call it the Tony Stark, Captain Kirk problem, where when you get to part 2, they feel a need to undo all the character growth of the first one. Tony Stark goes back to being a selfish narcissist for no reason in Iron Man 2. Captain Kirk goes back to being, headstrong and stubborn and impulsive, despite the fact that we resolved that in part 1. And we've done that again, specifically with Mary Steenburgen's character. There seems to be a whole thing about her relationship with her husband that got resolved in the first movie that seems to get undone here. And that's not to take away from the obvious affection that's there. And if you are a really big fan of the first movie, which, generally speaking, someone like my mother is a big fan of the. My mother laughed like a gibbon through the first, just chuckled away, because it's exactly my mum's kind of middle of the road raunch humour, like my mum's middle of the road version of raunch humour. That's the book club to a T, and I think she would enjoy the sequel, but not as much, which is kind of how I fall on it. It just feels a lot like an Ocean's 12, a sort of the cast are having more fun than the audience is. I think it'll make the money because it's got that brand loyalty there, and it's got the idyllic Italian scenery and things like that. And before anyone asks, yes, it is an infinitely better sequel. It's an infinitely better Let's Go on Holiday Girls sequel than, for instance, Sex and the City 2 was, because for one thing, this takes 14 minutes for them to go on holiday. Sex and the City 2 took a sodding hour of a 2.5-hour movie, right? Batman began in an hour and 10 minutes, and he had to be trained by ninjas. Come on. You know what I mean? One of them things.
Yeah, you want to get straight to it and get straight to the crux of the storyline,
like
really.
14 minutes. 14 minutes, a nice conservative amount of time. It's one of those movies as well that you can watch and you can piece together every plot development. You know, as soon as someone mentions this, you're like, that's a Chekhov's gun that's going to come up later. You know, someone's getting shot with that Chekhov's gun down the line. As soon as this character makes this, you know that there's going to be a moment at the end of the movie when that has to pay off. It's definitely one of those. But like I say, this is not written with the intention of being a Christopher Nolan movie. It's written for my mum. So, you know, arguably it's kind of successful in its ambitions, I would say. And like Diane Keaton's, you know, there being all, you know, lady boss about it with the classic linen pantsuits and the weird tuxedo collared blouses that she wears. She's, you know, there's no rival to Diane Keaton. She is the queen forevermore. Candice Bergen, who at one point turns up to a party in this movie looking strangely like Brian May from Queen. I can't figure that one out, but, you know, does get to have some fun. Nice to see her letting her hair down, or at least blown out, as it were, in this case. And then you get, of course, to Ms. Fonda. All hail Jane Fonda, who, like I say, at this point has a career entirely built upon simply showing up and playing Jane Fonda for the second time in 2 months, because we reviewed 80 for Brady together recently, in which Jane Fonda turned up to play Jane Fonda in exactly the same damn way. And it was great. I'm never tired of seeing Jane Fonda. There's something about the presence of Jane Fonda that you find kind of reassuring. She's kind of like a female Bruce Campbell in that way. Or Bruce Campbell is the male Jane Fonda. I mean, we're saying, but there is something of that just magnetic personality, that absolute presence. And she's got it in spades. However, I'm just going to point out that Mary Steenburgen remains an absolute treasure of a human being, and I would like her forevermore to be in all the movies. Also, I like to imagine, just for a second, that the characters played by her and her on-screen husband here, Craig T. Nelson from Coach, because they played Ryan Reynolds' parents in The Proposal in 2009, I just like to imagine they're the same characters. It kind of works. If you just assume these are Ryan Reynolds' Alaskan parents from The Proposal. This is Betty White's, Betty White's son and daughter-in-law. I think it adds something to the film. Definitely. And Jane Fonda could just be the 80 for Brady lady as well. Like, just interconnect this universe. Let's fast X this and make it a cinematic universe forevermore. I can say, I liked it. I didn't love it. I loved the first one. And it definitely doesn't have a needle drop quite as strong as Let's Marvin Gaye and Get It On by Meghan Trainor. And who was I forget who the dude was. You're the DJ, sir. Who did that with?
Charlie Puth.
Charlie Puth, thank you. Meghan Trainor. I only remember Meghan Trainor because she's cute. Meghan Trainor and Charlie Puth. Also, it's a catchy song. But no needle drop quite like that, although there were a lot of Italian pop song covers, it's worth noting. So I think you could hear one in the clip there. Like I say, if you're a fan of the first one, you'll like this. You won't love it. That was definitely the case for me. But would I watch a third chapter? I'm not going to lie. Yes, absolutely. Please make it immediately. You've got my money.
So from what you said during there, it sounds like if you're a 50-year-old female, you'd quite enjoy sitting down with a bottle of Lambrini and your friends to watch this.
What 50-year-olds do you know are drinking Lambrini? What? Who are you hanging out?
I don't know. I don't know any. I'm just...
I'll say, what's your
just
mum
throwing
like?
it out
Jesus.
There.
even
Well,
my mum would be there. Even my mum would be there with a bottle of Beck's. Jeez.
I'll let you into a secret. One of my birthday presents from my mother, bearing in mind I am 43, was a bottle of Lambrini.
Oh my God! Fair play, sir. Well, if you would like to read. If you'd like to read the next chapter of the book club for yourselves, you can happily find it in all multiplexes from today, rated 12A. Like I say, I would see it. If you like the first one, definitely go and see it.
Brilliant. All right. Well, we're moving on. Last movie to talk about. I'm really looking forward to hearing about this. Plan 75. And we'll see what Van thinks about that in just a second. Stay right where you are. Hello and welcome back. Our final movie to review on Off Screen then with Van Connor is Plan 75. I've read the synopsis to this. It looks great.
Yes, it's quite a concept for a movie, this one, isn't it? Almost sounds like a Tory plan, doesn't it? It sounds like a solution for the cost of living crisis in a dystopian Britain, doesn't it? Right, so Plan 75, if you're wondering what we were describing now, Plan 75. Okay, Japanese film about a fictional plan number 75. The movie opens with the suicide of a man who has opened fire with a sniper scope on an old folks' home. He then takes his own life, and that's how we're introduced to Plan 75, which is a government initiative that has been brought in to address the issue of overpopulation. A lack of births and a surplus of OAPs is leading to a cost of living crisis, just a general crisis that needs some kind of remedy. So the government initiates Plan 75, which is effectively a state-sanctioned euthanasia scheme in which you can simply decide to end your life. And to incentivize you to do that, they actually give you a cash grant that you can either use then to pay for your funeral, or you can give it to your family, or you can enjoy your last days. And against the backdrop of this, because it sounds quite sensationalized, it is a cold, hard sort of slice of life drama, like an almost kitchen sink drama. Against this backdrop, we have a number of subplots with different characters. You have one older woman who's struggles to get into the scheme initially, and then questions, questions the morality of it. You have an older gentleman who's going through the scheme as well, and who then reconnects with someone who actually works for the scheme, a younger worker for the actual scheme, who's like the government administrator, who is in fact his estranged nephew, who is then forced to question whether or not he, in good conscience, wants his sort of more or less distanced uncle to go through with this, and starts looking into alternative options. It's really fascinating stuff and really, really well done. There's something. I thought of Gattaca, weirdly watching this. I thought of Andrew Nichols. It's Andrew Nichols' Gattaca from '97 when I was watching this. Gattaca was had a similar sort of class-like structure about it. This, however, is one of those films that is very palpable in its cold, hard drama. You find yourself immersed within it, and you do go along rompingly for the ride. It's not a film you enjoy. I think we had this conversation after someone asked, "Did you enjoy that?" I went, "Well, I liked it. I wouldn't say I enjoyed it, because I don't think it's a film you enjoy. Like, to enjoy it would probably make you a very sick person. It's like saying I enjoyed The House of a Thousand Corpses or Human Centipede 2. Didn't enjoy them. I watched them and appreciated them for what they were, but I think if I said I enjoyed them, you'd find something very wrong with me." This is very much one of those, although not in the same way as either of those films, obviously. The performances across the board, all great. The style of, which I say is quite distant, quite cold. And it is that distance and it is that coldness that makes this work. Because I think if you step any closer, if you're any more, if for instance the physical presence of the camera were any more immersed in this, if the POV of this story was, slightly closer, I think it would feel too sensationalized. I think it would feel too ridiculous. I think you'd find daftness in it. And I think presented the way it has been gives it a level, I don't know how to say, a level of engagement that I think we wouldn't quite have been afforded with the alternative. Now, it's a first-time direction, I think, from Chihayakawa, I think. So it's a first-time feature. And for a first-time feature, it's an absolute mind blow. Like, if this is someone's first film, I don't even want to think what the fifth one's going to be. Because, damn, this is really impressive. And I know this actually had, when we were saying earlier about Eight Mountains being submitted for Italy's, candidate for Best International Feature, this apparently has been submitted for Japan's. And I can absolutely not only see it happening, like getting the nomination next year. This is the kind of film where you think, unless there's something like really game-changing, or Alfonso Cuarón's got a week off and nothing to do, this is walking away with that Oscar next year. Like, quite clearly. Like I say, unless Cuarón's got like a week off and like downtime, needs something to do for an afternoon. But yeah, this is one I can absolutely see getting a lot of praise. Like, almost retroactive praise when we get to next year's Oscar season. And this comes up again, and yeah, it's absolutely one of those, through and through.
One thing I would want to know watching a movie like this is what the hell was Plan 1 to 74?
Yeah, what was Order 66? Yeah, I know exactly what you mean with that. We do get, they have got options, and they have apparently explored umpteen other options. And the opening scene is really harrowing. In particular, that opening sequence of the shooting spree on the old folks home.
Yeah,
that is really harrowing stuff, and it starts this off. So you start this movie from a place of complete shock, and it really only goes colder and colder from there. It's not designed, very bleak drama.
It's not designed then to be this kind of amazing action-packed kind of movie. It's more about the starkness of Plan 75.
Yes. About that, but okay. It's more about the starkness of kind of navigating through a world in which this is the thing. It's noticeable they don't really question the logistics of it or anything like that. They don't really, they don't delve into what could be the sillier aspects of it. This is played completely straight, and I don't think it would work anywhere near as well in any other context. As I say, it's something we found ourselves after we were having a discussion afterwards talking about what the inevitable English language remake is going to involve, and I honestly hope there never ever is one, because I just don't see it having the same resonance at all. And I think the film's kind of perfect as it is. It's a 5-star film in my book. It's an absolutely brilliant movie, but don't watch this if you're feeling low, whatever you do, because it's going to be a bad day for you.
Right, okay, well, you can make your own mind up. Plan 75, which is in cinemas from today. Right, next week, I know which one you really want to talk about, but we'll save that for the end. We're going to look at Under the Fig Trees. I haven't even heard about this one.
Well, this is apparently this is I think is it Israeli? I'm not sure if this is not Israeli. But this is, I'm going to look this up. Hang on. It is in fact, well, it is in Arabic. Oh, it's Tunisian. Okay, it is Tunisian and in Arabic, and it is about about drama set during the summer harvest. So, okay, no, don't quite know what to expect from that one. But like I say, there are other things out next week. There's a documentary next week, and I need to share the screener link for this with you because I think you'll enjoy this. This has got a touch of. Do you remember years ago? Do you remember My Name is Dave Gorman, or I Am Dave Gorman? Dave Gorman did a thing years ago where he went around the world meeting other Dave Gormans. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, I remember it. Yeah.
Right. Someone has done a documentary. It's called The Other Fellow. The poster for this, the marketing campaign, involves a silhouette of a certain iconic tuxedo-clad super spy. I'm sure you can guess which. It therefore involves a look at all the other men named James Bond.
Brilliant.
So, yeah, I'll send you the link for that one. We have also got this has been very divisive as well. Like, people have loved this and they have hated it. It is the third film from Ari Aster, the director of Midsommar and Hereditary. It stars Joaquin Phoenix and it's called Beau is Afraid. It is 3 hours long. Sorry, it's 2 hours 59, because I said that in front of the publicist. I said, it's 3 hours long. He went, excuse me, no. It's 2 hours 59. I'm like, okay, fair play, semantics. I got to see this on Monday night. I had a 12-hour screening day on Monday, and this was the end. This was the final 3 hours. Sorry, 2 hours 59 of it. Sorry, Zach. But we get to talk about it next week, along with the much anticipated Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. They have adapted Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret for the screen. I'd say I'm really looking forward to this one, as well as, and you know what my heavy hitter is for next week. It's the return of the family. It's time to turn the NOS tank up. It's time to put the pedal down, grip that steering wheel, and get fast and get furious. Fast X is next week, the 11th movie. Technically 12th if we're counting Justin Lin's one with Kang Sung Kang, sorry. And Fast X is upon us. I cannot wait. Jason Momoa trying to murder the Fast family. Pour it in me. Oh my God, I can't wait.
Yeah, I am absolutely looking forward to that one. That's definitely on my list for next week. But yeah, loads to look forward to next week. That's all we've got time for this week on Off Screen, though. Of course, I've been Adam Ball.
I've been Van Connor, and we shall return.